Hi, YouTube. I'm Yaya or Imaya, and I'm going to read to you from the Bible starting at Genesis. So I'm at Genesis 1, and I'm going to read to you from the Good News Translation. So, in the beginning, when God created the universe, the earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness, and the Spirit of God was moving over the water. Then God commanded, "Let there be light," and light appeared. God was pleased with what he saw. Then he separated the light from the darkness, and he named the light day, and the darkness night. Evening passed, and morning came. That was the first day. Then God commanded, "Let there be a dome to divide the water, and keep it in two separate places." And it was done. So God made a dome, and it separated the water under it from the water above it. He named the dome Sky. Evening passed and morning came, and that was the second day. Then God commanded, "Let the water below the sky come together in one place, so that the land will appear." And it was done. He named the land Earth, and the water which had come together he named Sea. And God was pleased with what he saw. Then he commanded, "Let the earth produce all kinds of plants, those that bear grain and those that bear fruit." And it was done. So the earth produced all kinds of plants, and God was pleased with what he saw. Evening passed and morning came. That was the third day. Then God commanded, Let lights appear in the sky to separate day from night, and to show the time when days, years, and religious festivals begin. They will shine in the sky to give light to the earth." And it was done. So God made the two larger lights, the sun to rule over the day, and the moon to rule over the night. He also made the stars. He placed the lights in the sky to shine on the earth, to rule over the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God was pleased with what he saw. Evening passed and morning came. That was the fourth day. Then God commanded, "Let the water be filled with many kinds of living beings, and let the air be filled with birds." So God created the great sea monsters, all kinds of creatures that live in the water, and all kinds of birds. And God was pleased with what he saw. He blessed them all, and told the creatures that live in the water to reproduce and to fill the sea. And he told the birds to increase in number. Evening passed and morning came, and that was the fifth day. Then God commanded, "Let the earth produce all kinds of animal life, domestic and wild, large and small." And it was done. So God made them all, and he was pleased with what he saw. Then God said, "And now we will make human beings. They will be like us and resemble us. They will have power over the fish, the birds, and all the animals, domestic and wild, large and small." So God created human beings, making them to be like himself. He created them male and female, blessed them, and said, "Have many children, so that your descendants will live all over the earth and bring it under their control. I am putting you in charge of the fish, the birds, and all the wild animals. I have provided all kinds of grain and all kinds of fruit for you to eat. But for all the wild animals and for all the birds, I have provided grass and leafy plants for food." And it was done. God looked at everything he had made. He was very pleased. Evening passed and morning came. That was the sixth day. Chapter 2. And so the whole universe was completed. By the seventh day, God finished what he had been doing and stopped working. He blessed the seventh day and set it apart as a special day, because by that day he had completed his creation and stopped working. And that is how the universe was created. The Garden of Eden. When the Lord God made the universe, there were no plants on the earth, and no seeds had sprouted, because he had not sent any rain, and was no one to cultivate the land, but water would come up from beneath the surface and water the ground. Then the Lord God took some soil from the ground and formed a man out of it. He breathed life-giving breath into his nostrils, and the man began to live. Then the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man he had formed. He made all kinds of beautiful trees grow there and produce good fruit. In the middle of the garden stood the tree that gives life, and the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad. A stream flowed in Eden and watered the garden. Beyond Eden, divided into 4 rivers. The first river is the Pishon. It flows around the country of Havilah. Pure gold is found there, and also rare perfume and precious stones. The second river is the Gihon. It flows around the country of Cush. And let me scroll down because it says that Cush is actually, where is it? Cush is Mesopotamia or modern day Ethiopia. So let me scroll back up. Okay. The third river is the Tigris, which flows east of Assyria, and the fourth river is the Euphrates. Then the Lord God placed the man in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and guard it. He told him, "You may eat the fruit of any tree in the garden, except the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad. You must not eat the fruit of that tree. If you do, you will die the same day." Then the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to live alone. I will make him a suitable companion to help him." So he took some soil from the ground and formed all the animals and all the birds. Then he brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And that is how they all got their names. So the man named all the birds and all the animals, but not one of them was a suitable companion to help him. Then the Lord God made the man fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took out one of the man's ribs and closed up the flesh. He formed a man out of the rib and brought her to him. Then the man said, "At last, here is one of my own kind, bone taken from my bone and flesh from my flesh. Woman is her name, because she was taken out of man. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife, and they become one." The man and the woman were both naked, but they were not embarrassed. Human disobedience, chapter 3. Now the snake was the most cunning animal that the Lord God had made. The snake asked the woman, "Did God really tell you not to eat the fruit from any tree in the garden?" "We may eat the fruit of any tree in the garden," the woman answered, "except the tree in the middle of it. God told us not to eat the fruit of that tree or even touch it. If we do, we will die." The snake replied, "That's not true. You will not die. God said that because he knows that when you eat it, you will be like God and know what is good and what is bad." The woman saw how beautiful the tree was and how good its fruit would be to eat. She thought how wonderful it would be to become wise. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband, and he also ate it. As soon as they had eaten it, they were given understanding and realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and covered themselves. That evening they heard the Lord God walking in the garden, and they hid from him among the trees. But the Lord God called out to the man, "Where are you?" He answered, "I heard you in the garden. I was afraid and hid from you because I was naked." "Who told you that you were naked?" God asked. "Did you eat the fruit that I told you not to eat?" The man answered, "The woman you put here with me gave me the fruit, and I ate it." The Lord God asked the woman, "Why did you do this?" She replied, "The snake tricked me into eating it." God pronounced judgment. Then the Lord God said to the snake, "You will be punished for this. You alone of all animals must bear this curse. From now on you will crawl on your belly, and you will have to eat dust as long as you live. I will make you and the woman hate each other. Her offspring and yours will always be enemies. Her offspring will crush your head, and you will bite her offspring's heel." And he said to the woman, "I will increase your trouble in pregnancy and your pain in giving birth. In spite of this, you will still have desire for your husband, yet you will be subject to him." And he said to the man, "You listened to your wife and ate the fruit, which I told you not to eat. Because of what you have done, the ground will be under a curse. You will have to work hard all your life to make it produce enough food for you. It will produce weeds and thorns, and you will have to eat wild plants. You will have to work hard and sweat to make the soil produce anything until you go back to the soil from which you were formed. You are made from soil, and you will become soil again. Adam named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all human beings. And the Lord God made clothes out of animal skins for Adam and his wife, and he clothed them. Adam and Eve sent out of the garden. Then the Lord God said, "Now these human beings have become like one of us and have knowledge of what is good and what is bad. They must not be allowed to take from the tree that gives life, eat it, and live forever." So the Lord God sent them out of the garden of Eden and made them cultivate the soil from which they had been formed. Then at the east side of the garden he put living creatures and a flaming sword which turned in all directions. This was to keep anyone from coming near the tree that gives life. Chapter 4. Then Adam had intercourse with his wife, and she became pregnant. She bore a son and said, "By the Lord's help I have gotten a son." So she named him Cain. Later she gave birth to another son, Abel. Abel became a shepherd, but Cain was a farmer. After some time, Cain brought some of his harvest and gave it as an offering to the Lord. Then Abel brought the first lamb born to one of his sheep, killed it, and gave the best parts of it as an offering. The Lord was pleased with Abel and his offering, but he rejected Cain and his offering. Cain became furious, and he scowled in anger. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why that scowl on your face? If you had done the right thing, you would be smiling. But because you have done evil, sin is crouching at your door. It wants to rule you, but you must overcome it." Then Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out and into the fields." When they were out in the fields, Cain turned on his brother and killed him. The Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" He answered, "I don't know. Am I supposed to take care of my brother?" Then the Lord said, "Why have you done this terrible thing? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground like a voice calling for revenge. You are placed under a curse and can no longer farm the soil. It has soaked up your brother's blood as if it had opened up its mouth to receive it when you killed him. If you try to grow crops, the soil will not produce anything. You will be a homeless wanderer on the earth." And Cain said to the Lord, "This punishment is too hard for me to bear. You are driving me off the land and away from your presence. I will be a homeless wanderer on the earth, and anyone who finds me will kill me." But the Lord answered, "No. If anyone kills you, 7 lives will be taken in revenge." So the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who met him not to kill him. And Cain went away from the Lord's presence and lived in a land called Wandering, which is east of Eden. Cain and his wife had a son and named him Enoch. Then Cain built a city and named it after his son. Enoch had a son named Irad, who was the father of Mehujael. And Mehujael had a son named Methushael, who was the father of Lamech. Lamech had 2 wives, Ada and Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who was the ancestor of those who raise livestock and live in tents. His brother was Jubal, the ancestor of all musicians who play the harp and the flute. Zillah gave birth to Tubal-Cain, who made all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, "Ada and Zillah, listen to me. I have killed a young man because he struck me. If 7 lives are taken to pay for killing Cain, 77 will be taken if anyone kills me." Seth and Enosh. Adam and his wife had another son. She said, "God has given me a son to replace Abel, whom Cain killed." So she named him Seth. Seth had a son whom he named Enosh. It was then that people began using the Lord's holy name in worship. Okay. And chapter 5. Okay. The descendants of Adam. This is the list of the descendants of Adam. When God created human beings, he made them like himself. He created them male and female, blessed them, and named them human beings. When Adam was 130 years old, he had a son who was like him, and he named him Seth. After that, Adam lived another 800 years. He had other children and died at the age of 930. When Seth was 105, he had a son, Enosh, and then lived another 807 years. He had other children and died at the age of 912. When Enosh was 90, he had a son named Kenan, and then lived another 815 years. He had other children and died at the age of 905. When Kenan was 70, he had a son, Mahalalel, and then lived another 840 years. He had other children and died at the age of 910. When Mahalalel was 65, he had a son, Jared, and then lived another 830 years. He had other children and died at the age of 895. When Jared was 162, he had a son, Enoch, and then lived another 800 years. He had other children and died at the age of 962. When Enoch was 65, he had a son, Methuselah. After that, Enoch lived in fellowship with God for 300 years and had other children. He lived to be 365 years old. He spent his life in fellowship with God, and then he disappeared because God took him away. When Methuselah was 187 years, when Methuselah was 187, he had a son, Lamech, and then lived another 782 years. He had other children and died at the age of 969. And side note, I don't know if you've heard of the term as old as Methuselah, but that's where that term came from, because he lived to be 969 years old, so it looks like he was the oldest living person. It looks like, according to this. So, when Lamech was 182, he had a son and said, "From the very ground on which the Lord put a curse, this child will bring us relief from all our hard work." So he named him Noah. Lamech lived another 595 years. He had other children and died at the age of 777. After Noah was 500 years old, he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that is the end of chapter 5. So I hope that you enjoyed that. I don't think anyone else is really doing this on YouTube, just reading the word like I am, at least not with their face. And so I hope you really enjoy that. There was one part of the Bible that I thought was really interesting as I was practicing to do these chapters, first 5 chapters with you. And in chapter 1, I thought this was quite fascinating. So I'm on BibleGateway.com reading to you. And I went to the Asbury Bible Commentary, and I went down to the origin of the universe. And let's see. Okay, so down here it says, "In the beginning God created," can also be translated as a temporal clause, when God began to create. In this latter way, creation may be understood as an ongoing process, either in interpretation, either interpretation is feasible. The crucial verb, of course, is created, or the Hebrew bara. It means to cut or carve or shape something. As such, contrary to some, bara does not necessarily connote the idea of ex nihilo. It may well express the concept of using material like a sculptor. This idea is borne out in verse 2, which does not indicate that God began with nothing, but that there was an existing chaos. In this regard, verse 2 begins with chaotic matter, portray the shaping of matter into an orderly universe. The Creator is one who brings order out of chaos, not only in the natural world, by implication, over personal history as well. The opening chapter of the book communicates much about the character of the Creator God it introduces. From his creative acts, one can deduce the nature of his being. Because the world did not come into existence by accident, but reflects order and design, one can postulate a deity who begins teleologically. I don't know what that word means exactly. I'd have to look it up, but I'm going to go on. The universe is an expression of his will. The immensity of creation affords a conception of the innate power of the Creator. He exercises sovereignty over all he has made. Indeed, the means by which creation was brought into being was effortless. God characteristically spoke the world into being. The designation of God, or Elohim in the Hebrew, itself connotes the idea of strength. El is the strongest one. By combining these two perceptions of the God of Genesis, both his purpose and power, one recognizes a deity who has the ability to fulfill his original purpose for creation and redeem an unresponsive world. The kind of God who can create is the kind of God who can recreate. Okay, so I just thought that was fascinating because before I read this commentary on the Bible, I never thought about that. I always assumed that God just created the earth from nothing, but this here suggests that that the earth existed in some form, and God actually created order out of chaos. And so once again, I'll read this part to you. In the beginning, God created the universe. This is chapter 1, verse 1. The earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in darkness, and the Spirit of God was moving over the water. Then God commanded, "Let there be light," and light appeared. God was pleased with what he saw. Then he separated the light from darkness, and he named the light day and the darkness night. Evening passed, and morning came. That was the first day. So, to me, that's quite fascinating. I've never thought about that before I read this commentary. So I have read through the Bible one time, and I read it in the King James Version. And obviously, the last book, Revelations, I really didn't understand, but maybe one day I'll read the commentary on that and understand that better. So I'm hoping to read through the whole Bible eventually with you guys. But so I'm just starting with the first 5 chapters. So I thought that was fascinating. And if I think that's fascinating, maybe some of you will too. God bless you. It is now 11:40 in the p.m. and I got to get ready. I got to clean up the kitchen and get ready to go to bed so I can function tomorrow. But God bless you and have a wonderful night.